Hello, Happy New Year to everyone, and welcome back to our latest episode, episode 85, which bizarrely follows our lost episode that we titled, episode 10 and a half. Today we're going to look at and review the last ever Game Boy, the end of an era, called the Game Boy Micro, which was given the production code of Oxy-001. Being first offered for sale September 13, 2005, the system went on to sell a disappointing 2.42 million units worldwide, therefore never reaching the expectations and projections expected by Nintendo. However, before we dive headlong into examining this week's star and focus, I'd like to take a few moments to look back at the last episode's photo quiz question, we on this channel call What in the World? And, as an assist, the last episode was titled episode 10 and a half, or 10.5, confusing I know, but such is the trouble of lost episodes. Anyway, here it is, this mystery item, clearly showing its Nintendo pedigree and with that scrolling script, its heritage, with that iconic and historic logo looming large. And our regular viewer, CoolFX, was correct in guessing it was the 1965 Ehan Trumps, or otherwise known as storybook cards, from a pre-gaming Nintendo. This particular one shown features Donald Duck, housed in these super cute and tiny little TV sets. We featured the whole series as our very first episode here on YouTube. That episode number was episode 1, feel free to go and check it out. Anyhows, congratulations, and thanks for playing. With Nintendo seemingly right back on top of the gaming world in 2023, despite having no new hardware offerings, like the much vaunted Switch Pro, it seems as good a time as any to reflect on a product they couldn't transfer their usual golden touch onto. I'm not talking about consoles with middling to lackluster sales like the GameCube or the Wii U. Though both of these were not particularly successful, they both had their corner of the market during their heyday, and each had a number of amazing hit games. That's not it at all. I'm actually talking about the bizarre and somewhat questionable handheld that time appears to have simply forgot. And for today's review, that is the Game Boy Micro. Let's take a look. Starting with our usual perusal and flick through the instructions booklet, here we see the front and back pages. Followed up here's with the table of contents, which is in itself a useful index, that precedes the obligatory modernism we must endure, such as warnings and various caution statements for conditions like repetitive strain injuries, eye fatigue, or even a full-blown seizure being identified as a possibility, if the device is overused. And with battery safety, maintenance and disposal instructions complete, we then get to see the various schematic drawings in multiple elevations, which are coupled to a detailed list of the major components. With number 11 on the list, showing the welcome return of the traditional headphone connector, that was omitted from its successor, the Game Boy Advance SP. Page 10 of the instructions booklet, identifies and underscores the greatest failing, or at least its biggest shortfall. It is wholly limited to playing Game Boy Advance games. This is really sad, which resulted in the total lack of any backwards compatibility, prohibiting many of the earlier system's mega titles being played on the Micro, but the tiny size required a ruthless removal of any secondary or tertiary components. Page 11, 12 and 13 covers battery charging, its removal and disposal including the use of the bespoke charger port and cable. At the foot of page 15, is an interesting and wholly unique system feature to the Game Boy Micro, a sliding brightness adjustment switch. And unlike the Game Boy Advance SP101 version, which only offers 2 brightness levels, the Micro offers full control, from off to the maximum brilliant brightness. Surprisingly, even some of the Game Boy Micro's owners are unaware of this feature, likely because to operate the dimming or brightening effect, the player must first hold down the shoulder L button, while simultaneously pressing the volume switch up or down. Nintendo recommends that the lighting be as low as comfortably possible, to extend the battery's playing time. Multiplayer options between the Micro and the other compatible, but earlier Game Boy Advance systems is explained. However, the Micro once again has a requirement for bespoke and unique adapters. These new add-ons are required to achieve wireless and wired connectivity across the range. While pages 20 and 21 offer some interesting and unusual processes, it's on page 20 we are treated to the formal recommendation of removing the metal faceplate, by using the enclosed tool. Singularly, this interchangeable faceplate function is the best part of the overall Game Boy Micro design. The ability to drastically change the look and appearance of the handheld in a matter of seconds is tremendous. Worthy of note, is the official faceplates sold by Nintendo all contain a screen protector as an integrated component. Several aftermarket faceplates, apart from being plastic, lack the center screen, therefore exposing the glass base lower display from the Micro, and that's not recommended. I like to look for any real or perceived lineage in a company's designs or concepts, that process whereby a designer has the wherewithal to have a second look, or decides to try out an old product offering, but with a different spin, and Nintendo are notorious for doing this. So, the first time I can recollect this style of cover or faceplate being employed by the Nintendo designers was all the way back to the Game & Watch series, and the range called the Crystal Screen. It has many similarities, including the screen protector that sits over the lower glass display. Sadly, these covers were never intended to be switchable on the Game & Watch units. The battery compartment can be accessed through a removable cover plate, using a zero-sized Phillips head screwdriver. However, with a fully metallic case, caution must be used to avoid scratches. Following the troubleshooting section, and the section on ERSB ratings are shown, detailing how guides are awarded, identifying age groups and maturity levels for the purpose of having appropriate in-game playing. The usual warranty information and disclaimers complete the instructions booklet. The Game Boy Micro, released in September 2005, was the final system in the hallowed Game Boy line. It arrived just over 2 years after the Game Boy Advance SP, which managed to move over 40 million units, and received near universal critical acclaim. And as a point of interest, the Game Boy known and advertised as the Macro, which is nowadays quite widely available, should not be confused with either the Micro, or an official Nintendo product. It is in point of fact, merely the bottom half of a Nintendo DS Lite. The Micro was arguably Nintendo's best-looking Game Boy. To this day, it remains Nintendo's only handheld with a full metal body, and it boasted those amazing interchangeable faceplates, so you could customize your system at a moment's notice. Remember, 2005 was back when flip phones were trying to get smaller and smaller, and the Micro didn't buck the trend. Its name was fitting, as it measured just 2 inches tall, 4 inches wide, and only 0.7 inches deep. And be it good news or bad news, its 2-inch screen was nearly a full inch smaller than the SP's, but it did feature a much stronger backlight and richer colors than the SP or its predecessors. During its surprise announcement at E3, 2005, Nintendo of America President Reggie Fils-Aimé described the new handheld as just a hair bigger, and 2/3 the weight of an iPod mini. Perhaps pointing to its preferred marketplace and potential customer base? At only $99, with access to the entire Game Boy Advance library, it seemed primed for success. The Micro, however, was dead in the water. Despite its beautiful design, critics complained about its too small screen and said that its compact chassis, cramped button configuration caused hand cramps after extended play sessions, despite mimicking the Nintendo Entertainment System's controller and overall layout. In order to fit the internals into such a small body, Nintendo opted to sacrifice backward compatibility, meaning that users with large collections of Game Boy and Game Boy Color games wouldn't be able to use them on the new machine. Though it achieved decent initial sales in Japan, the Micro never took off in Europe and North America. It ended up selling only 2.42 million units over its brief lifespan, paling in comparison to 36.2 million sold by the Game Boy Advance and the 43.57 million sold by the Game Boy Advance SP. Interestingly, at least to me, was the carry forward of the detachable and interchangeable faceplate concept, which reappeared on the new 3DS in late 2014, again adding near instant restyling or customization to your handheld. And, once again, much like the Game Boy Micro before it, third parties entered the market to offer their versions or copies of their own faceplates. Some, like this beautiful Game & Watch version, won me over and remains a firm favorite to this day. So the Game Boy Micro took a lot of things from the past, and blended them in, and while it ultimately failed to deliver upon its promising inception, it also offered up its best ideas to the future, to which I celebrate that we would see them again, but in a fresh and new way. But really, what actually sunk the Game Boy Micro was a competitor. There was a new and innovative contender to the Game Boy throne, and it came from Nintendo itself. Nearly a full year prior, back in November 2004, a third pillar system was launched, called the DS. This developer's system, or dual-screen device, simply destroyed the Game Boy. Capable of playing all of the Game Boy Advance library, but able to play its new flashcard-style games, the system simply dominated. I will cover this original DS in the next episode, so I'll stop here, but it simply outplayed and outperformed the Game Boy Micro, and honestly, the Micro never stood a chance. As a point of interest, the Game Boy Micro Player 2 shown here, is a Club Nintendo prize, exclusively from Japan, and is attached to a dummy non-working unit, made completely of metal. It's designed as a nice display item. Another anomaly that can often trip up buyers is where the unit was originally sold. The Micro on the left is a North American variant, complete with serial number. To the right are two Japanese models. Note the lack of serial number, and the addition of the 20th anniversary logo. However, no Game Boy was ever region locked, so all advanced games will play on either model. So finishing up on my thoughts on why the Micro fell short of its potential, and why it was discontinued in 2008, while the Game Boy Advance SP soldiered on until December 2009. Nintendo even cut the price of the DS shortly before the Game Boy Micro's release, and consumers shopping for a new device could either purchase the Micro for the launch price of $99, or spend an extra $30 and get a new system, the DS for $129. Remembering that the DS played all the Game Boy Advance games in addition to the popular DS games that flooded the market. The choice, for many shoppers, was easy. It seems that even Nintendo realized that its Game Boy Micro experiment had backfired very quickly. The console was discontinued in 2008, effectively a full 2 years before its predecessor, the Game Boy Advance SP took its final bow. Now, the console is viewed as a quirky retro item, and has become popular with collectors due to the limited number of units out there. And honestly, it does not even feel like a toy, and its super small size, coupled to the amazing interchangeable faceplates and great screen, and all of that stuff, no matter how great it was seen to be, could actually save this system. And on that somewhat disappointing note, we sadly have to wrap up today's little review of the last offering in the great Game Boy range of handhelds, the beautiful and fitting grand finale system, the amazing Game Boy Micro. I genuinely hoped you liked today's video, but as time's short, it's now that time to quiz those expert brains out there on what in the world this Nintendo item could be. So, do you know? If you do, please feel free to drop a comment in the section below, or better still, add a subscription to the channel, and hit that notification bell to be alerted with each and every episode, where I will reveal the full picture. And there's just time to say thank you all for being here. I'd like to once again wish each and every one of you a great and successful 2023. I hope you can all follow along with me on this channel, company for the journey so to speak. So, thank you all so much.